Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Social Work Bubble podcast. I'm your host, Laura, and I practice as a therapist in New York. I have my bachelor's and master's in social work and currently work in a private practice. Today we're going to talk about life coaches and the many thoughts I have on the role life coaches play and a few instances where they overstep boundaries. So the first thing to talk about is really what's the difference between a life coach and a therapist. Basically, a life coach can help you in many respects with your life decisions. So they can help you plan for the future. They can help maybe change some habits to be healthier. They can basically offer support for the different areas in your life. A big part of that is changing behavior so you can live a better quality life. Now, a key part in life coaching that differs from therapy is life coaching a lot of the time is giving advice. It's helping people make decisions. Where that differs in therapy is, like, the number one rule in therapy is do not give advice. Therapy is not a place where you sit across from a therapist and they tell you what to do or they give you their personal opinion. Part of the decision making in therapy is not going there to have someone else make the decision for you, but such a key component is self-determination. So really exploring, perhaps through motivational interviewing or other forms of therapy, pros and cons, all of the possible decisions and outcomes of each decision and how that could impact someone's life. We never make that decision. We never, or should never, give advice unless for some reason it is absolutely warranted. I don't know what that situation would be. Some clients come to us and they ask us pointed, what do you think? What should I do? And it's a therapist's job to answer those questions in a smooth way where we kind of reflect it back onto the client. So this is a key difference between a life coach and a therapist. Therapy is also a huge part in which there's a skilled, trained, qualified professional that also understands and can teach you about your own internal, emotional, psychological behavior patterns, why you do certain things, and reflect on kind of the different connections. This also can depend on the type of therapy that you do, right? Cognitive behavior therapy focuses on the relationship between our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Psychodynamic therapy would pull on, making judgments and connections between our past and who we are in the present. And a lot of therapy is also teaching coping skills, understanding our own mental health. And therapy, this is a key point, therapy works with people that have a mental health diagnosis. Now, anyone can go to therapy. I'm not saying you have to have a mental health diagnosis to see a therapist, but we must keep that in mind in knowing the difference between a life coach and a therapist. If you have a severe mental health condition, you should not be seeing a life coach because they don't have the professional expertise and skills to be supporting you through that. So keeping that in mind, there are also many different types of therapy, like I've said, and we're also guided by a code of ethics and also by the American Psychological Association. I'm also guided by the National Association of Social Workers. So depending on, the therapist's background, they also have a code of ethics to follow and legal and ethical obligations that we must keep in mind. And we also have a license to practice. On life coaches, to be quite honest, I don't know what you need to be a life coach. I'm assuming it's a certification of some sort, but my understanding is a lot of people unfortunately also call themselves a life coach, but don't necessarily have the certification or qualification. I'm assuming in that field that's also frowned upon. So now that we've got a good understanding about the difference, let's talk about my issue with life coaches. Now, this I will say, there is a certain benefit to life coaching that I think can be great for people. They can offer a lot of support. Maybe someone has already gone through therapy. They've made a lot of improvements. they don't need intense support anymore. Their mental health concern has been treated. This could even be in maybe a more short-term concern, like if someone experienced PTSD and they're no longer having hypervigilance or paranoia or nightmares or anxiety. They've really overcome a lot of those symptoms, and they're really just looking for more supportive work in changing, like in keeping a healthy lifestyle, in making sure their habits are keeping up, that they're finding balance. That could be a good space for a life coach, but we also want to be careful because, like I said, once we start getting into the realm of people with mental health diagnoses, you want to be mindful of how that impacts someone's well-being and day-to-day life, and life coaches are not trained in mental health diagnoses. I think life coaches can also be a great support if you just want accountability. If you want someone to help you, like, keep on track of your finances or achieve a particular goal that's just related to general daily living activities, that could be a good support. Once it gets into the area of analyzing, of neurology, of behavior, of anxiety, depression, things like that, it's my opinion that life coaches aren't really trained in that area enough to be effective. So just be mindful of that. My first issue, which I've kind of already touched on with life coaches, and actually before we get into that, I want to preface this. I know that this is not all life coaches. Typically, this is really just a reflection of a lot of the people that are more at the top, kind of like the celebrity motivational speaker people. This is more pointed towards them. So I'm talking about like the Tony Robbins, the Rachel Hollises. I know that there's many more off the top of my head I cannot think, but kind of that realm. So the first concern I have is stepping into mental health and therapy unqualified, stepping into these topics unqualified, using cognitive behavior therapy, behavior modification, psychoanalysis. So something that I've seen quite a lot is I will see life coaches use these techniques or try to use these techniques and interventions that are related to CBT, behavior modification, psychoanalysis, and almost promote them as their personal advice and not say, this is a strategy, which honestly, maybe that's how they avoid getting in trouble for teaching concepts that they're not qualified to. But it's in a very smooth and slick way that they basically show people, or they try to show people, how to change their thinking patterns using CBT when they're not qualified and have never been trained in using CBT. And they're not a therapist and they don't have a degree in social work or psychology. And they feel like a Google search is enough to give them an effective understanding of how to use this skill. One thing that I noticed in particular is a lot of life coaches, and we'll get into this later, write books, they have conferences, and this is where you start to see a lot of those examples. I was reading a blog on one famous life coach, and in the book, he was literally laying out, this is cognitive behavior therapy. This is how you can change your thinking. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is all good and well. And I think it can be really important for people to have access to mental health treatment and strategies and interventions, especially when a lot of mental health support and services aren't widely accessible to people. So I think it's important to have awareness and for people to be able to have access to information on things that will help them and support them and not have it guarded. However, that information should still be coming from trained professionals, not from some random person, unless it's like a conversation with you and your friend, and maybe your friend's in therapy and they're just like, oh yeah, my therapist taught me this really cool strategy, it's been really helpful for me, something like that. That's very different than another person basically giving this essence of power, of I know what I'm talking about, of expertise, and teaching thousands, millions of people. This is how you can get over your depression. This is how you can deal with your anxiety. This is why you're not successful. You have to change your thinking. And then they come in with a whole entire post about using cognitive behavior therapy. And it's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, that's not okay. I've had many clients come in. Something that can happen in therapy is sometimes someone might think you're a doctor. Some therapists do have PhDs and medical degrees. I do not have my master's. And sometimes a client will call me doctor. And it is very important that straight off the gate, I let them know that I'm not a doctor. I usually try to make a joke of it. Like, I appreciate the promotion. Thank you so much. But I have my master's degree, so you can just call me Laura. Because a lot of them want to address me as doctor. And I clear that up, because even though it's cool to be called doctor, I'm not one, and that gives me a level of expertise that I do not have. So even though I'm still a therapist, I'm still licensed, I'm still qualified, you can't just promote yourself as knowing things that you were never trained in. So I have clients come to me and maybe they ask me a question about their physical health or a physical health condition, and I explain to them the importance in understanding the connection between physical and mental health, and how there are many physical symptoms of mental health conditions, like stomach hurting, or people have had hernias, or GI issues, or headaches, or nausea. And a lot of that can be attributed to anxiety and depression or PTSD. And so it's important to understand that connection, but I cannot give them advice about that. I typically let them know, these are my thoughts. It could very well be attributed to your mental health that you're experiencing. However, I recommend speaking to your primary care doctor and just ruling out if there's anything medical or physical going on. So that way I'm not also in the position of giving them expertise and giving them information and advice that I know nothing about. And so you just want to be mindful of that, which a lot of life coaches don't care about, apparently. And when I say, of course, when I say a lot, I'm talking about these more celebrity ones that like to abuse the power that they have. With that, kind of stepping into the mental health and therapy when you're not qualified to, that is also making judgments and reflections on people's experiences. So kind of the reason, well, you're behaving this way because of this, or you have this relationship with your partner because of your relationship with your father, making some psychoanalytic assumptions and judgments that, once again, you are not qualified to make. There is a difference between talking with a friend and being like, oh yeah, well, maybe they're doing this because of this reason, right? We all have those conversations with friends and family members, and we try to make sense of a situation. However, a huge part of what is wrong, especially with people that have a big following as a life coach, is they have power. They have a dynamic of power and authority. And so they give off this energy, and they honestly make people believe that they know what they're talking about when they have no training. Reading a book on CBT, reading a book on psychoanalysis does not give you the qualifications and expertise to speak about it. It doesn't matter how many books you've read. It doesn't honestly matter if the information you know is correct and what you're saying is accurate. It does not matter. You are not qualified. There are plenty of social workers and therapists, psychologists, and other mental health professionals that are fully capable of giving this information and providing support and educating people. This is not like you are the only one that can give this information out. And so, take a step back and redirect people. I think a huge part of knowing boundaries is the example I gave. If someone comes to me and asks a medical question, unless for some reason we are without a doubt sure it's because of their mental health, even in those situations, I direct them to talk to their primary care provider. And I think it's important for life coaches to know when to redirect a person that they're working with. you have concerns about your anxiety, you know what? I'm not really qualified in helping people through anxiety. That's a mental health condition, but I know some great therapists that could be a good support for you. Life coaches is helping people with healthy habits, helping people have balance, right? That includes getting them into therapy too. Okay, you cannot take on that role when, once again, you're not qualified. A big other problem that's sort of related to this is working with people specifically on problems where they are diagnosed and or require professional help. So, for example, marriage counseling, working on someone with their self-esteem, anxiety, depression, suicidality. There have been countless examples that I've seen where people they give relationship advice. They tell people, oh, my marriage is so great. Let me show you how we have a great marriage. And this is the key component to why therapists have this ethical obligation to really not give advice and to really not go into your own experiences and opinions. There is a time and place for that, but we have to be very mindful of how it'll impact a client. It's because we have a different life than the person that we are in front of. We cannot say, you know what, this worked for me, so try that in your marriage. We can absolutely recommend interventions, recommend supports, but it becomes a slippery slope when we just start giving advice based on our own experiences and what we found successful. Now, again, if we are trying out coping skills and we're trying to help a client through that, we can give them a few ideas, give them a few options, and say, you know, this might work for you, it might not work for you. We're going to try to find things that you feel are really helpful. We can't be making decisions for people, and we cannot be giving advice based on our own experiences unless we feel self-disclosure is incredibly important, and unless we are working at the capacity where clients are aware. So, for example, if we have a practice and like a major component of that practice is, you know what, the founder has PTSD, they opened up this treatment center to help other people with PTSD, it's a widely known thing. So then, you know, not only are you an expert and you have the qualifications, you also have a lived experience, which can make people feel more comfortable. You can, once again, it's just like trying to help people through their relationship issues and honestly, like, do couples counseling. No. Couples counseling is complex. It is iffy business sometimes. I don't do couples counseling. I might in the future, but it just can get complicated. It can get tricky. And from my perspective, at least. And you really can't be doing that because one size doesn't fit all. And so telling people this worked in my marriage, so try it. That's not how marriage works. All marriages are different. The third issue I have with life coaching is challenging mental health from the lens of just deal with it or think positive. This is so unrealistic, and it is so invalidating from people's experiences. Like, okay, your life sucks. Everyone's life sucks. Get over it. Move on. Move forward. And it's quite honestly infuriating because I've had so many people I've worked with, so many clients who have people around them that really just say, well, just think positive, just be positive. And I make it very clear to my clients and I let them know positive thinking is not a bad thing by any means. There is a time and place to be positive, but just the same, there's a time and place to be negative. And there are times where life sucks. And we have to be able to acknowledge that, or else we won't be able to move through it and process it. If we never acknowledge and validate what we're feeling, positive, negative, or neutral, then we're just ignoring it. We're not really addressing it. We're not really processing it and moving through it and understanding it. And the same thing with just think positive. Just think positive. just think positive about what? Sometimes there isn't a positive spin. Sometimes there's not silver lining. We can try to think of things more neutrally. We can keep focused on the facts and, the realistic thoughts that we can have, so that way anxiety and depression don't increase. We can do that, but positive thinking isn't always the answer, and it is important and necessary to allow ourselves to be in our feelings and to experience pain to some extent, because we have to validate it. We have to acknowledge what we're feeling, or else we're going to become angry. We're going to become in pain. We might develop anxiety or depression, and it's very important to take the time to sit in our feelings and to process them. I'm not saying we wallow. I'm not saying we stay in those feelings forever, but positive thinking is not always the answer. And a lot of the times it can cause harm because it's very invalidating. My next issue with life coaches is this idea of profiting off of pain. Now, in some respect, I also put some mental health professionals in this field, or in this category as well, where they profit off of pain. I think of like Dr. Phil, which is like such a big example of what not to do. And again, I think of these more like celebrity life coaches, the ones that have conferences. They literally sell tickets that are worth thousands of dollars to people that are the most vulnerable, to people that feel like they have no other option and no other support. And you literally use that vulnerability to take their money. And it is so harmful and so crazy to have such a vulnerable person spend thousands and thousands of dollars to go to a conference where you're not actually giving them any help. You're not giving them any support. And a lot of the times you're making their situation and how they feel and view themselves and the world around them worse and more hopeless, whether or not they see that then or down the road. I mentioned Tony Robbins earlier, and this is just another example. I watch a lot of commentary videos on YouTube. I think it's very fun and interesting. And something that a few different YouTubers I like talked about was at Tony Robbins conferences. A lot of the time, they'll have to have ambulances at conferences to be on suicide watch. There was also another Tony Robbins conference where he basically put this woman on the spot in the conference and had her break up with her significant other on the phone, live, like in real time, in front of the thousands of other people at the conference, when her body language was clearly saying she didn't want to. And also, he made that decision for her. Like, he's the one that said, call him and break up, and then forced her into it because of the social pressure of having thousands of people and Tony Robbins in front of you telling you you have to break up with your significant other. After he made a judgment that first, after not even meeting this significant other, after not even talking about him for more than a couple of minutes, not understanding this relationship fully, after literally 3 minutes of talking, and he made that decision for this woman, that apparently this person was not a good fit for her, which is so harmful. So many people, Tony Robbins too, talk about suicide, talk about depression, talk about anxiety, hopelessness at their conferences. And to me, the fact that they have to have ambulances there to be on watch in case anyone tries to hurt themselves because they feel so disempowered and they feel so hopeless afterwards. Because I don't know if you've ever watched any videos from these conferences, and it's not just Tony Robbins, it can be other people as well. But it's truly just brutal. Like, it really is invalidating, and it just feels like someone is yelling at you, basically telling you you're at fault. This is your problem. Now you have to fix it. And in mental health, it is important to take personal responsibility. It is important to know that you do have power and control. Even though, mental health is a big part genetic and biological, we still can focus on what's within our control and be empowered in knowing that we have coping skills, we have supports, we can change the way our brain functions and operates because of its neuroplasticity. And at these conferences, it's so like, do this, not that. You're living your life wrong. I'm living my life right. Advice. Not really addressing real issues that people are facing. It's all just a bunch of fluff, and it's a bunch of crap. Like, they say things like, focus on yourself, work harder, take responsibility, stop being so negative. And it's just like, what problems are these actually facing? Because a lot of people that go to motivational speakers and life coaches are, like I said, people that are very vulnerable, whether that's financially, emotionally, whatever that is. They're looking to better themselves or their life in some way. You aren't really addressing effectively people's mental health concerns that can be debilitating. You aren't addressing their socioeconomic status or their cultural identity that impacts where they are in society. You are truly not addressing anything that actually impacts people, and you're taking their money from these vulnerable people that need that money to basically become a millionaire, to basically live a fun and fresh life, while these people you took advantage of continue to suffer and don't actually get the support and help that they need. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because people out here are really just looking for help. They're looking for change. They're willing to sell their furniture, which did happen at a conference. Someone sold their furniture in order to afford the ticket. And it's really just abusive and manipulative behavior that can happen. Now, again, I said earlier, I just want to repeat this. This is not all life coaches. I think life coaches can be a huge support, but just be careful of these motivational speakers, of these like bigger life coaches. And honestly, I'm not saying smaller ones can't also be harmful. But we just want to be mindful and really listen to what they're saying and really understand the expectation. You know, if you're interested in getting a life coach, have a conversation with them about the expectation. Where are their boundaries? Where do they know not to cross the line and to refer you to someone else? So that's about that. That is my rant on life coaches. I think it's because I've been watching so many commentary videos lately. It really just got me in the groove to want to vent and rant because, you know, social workers, therapists, other people in the mental health field, we work so hard and we are so underpaid and underappreciated. And then there's people like this that are making so much money, giving advice that they're not qualified to give, making millions of dollars and being so like well off, but then worsening problems, giving people false information and worsening people's mental health, taking away their money, making them more vulnerable. And it's kind of just like, wow, okay. So not only are we underpaid and underappreciated, but now we have more problems that we have to solve because this person is greedy and wants to have authority and power over people and abuse that so that way they can gain something from that. It's just frustrating. So anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast today. Please leave your thoughts about life coaches, positive experiences, negative experiences, other boundaries that you've noticed that some people might cross. Share this podcast with a fellow social worker, a fellow mental health professional. And, you know, if you enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe, follow wherever you're listening on. You can also check out my website at thesocialworkbubble.com. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook at socialworkbub. I also have my Etsy shop, the Social Work Bubble Etsy shop. Everything's the Social Work Bubble. You can find me basically anywhere. So, thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time.